Welcome to One Grate Conversation. Recently, we had the pleasure of hosting Stephen McGown on our podcast. He is the longest held Al-Qaeda captive in the world, spending nearly 6 years in the Sahara Desert before his eventual release. As you can imagine, his whole world changed through his exposure to the militant group that held him captive for all those years. We had the privilege of hearing these experiences firsthand, how it can turn adversity into opportunities for growth, and not falling into the victim mentality that creates potential roadblocks. It was inspiring and mind-blowing to hear such a unique story that I wouldn't otherwise have been exposed to in my day-to-day life, and surely impacted me deeply that I definitely see the world a little differently now. I hope that you get as much from it as I did, if not more. Enjoy. So I really appreciate that you've come on to One Grate Conversation in such short notice, Steve. It's really exciting.
That's an absolute pleasure. That's an absolute pleasure.
I know we both had such short notice. I got like 2 days notice and you got like 24 hours. Yes, very grateful. So basically, starting from the top, what's one thing that kept you going?
There in the Sahara during my 6 years incarceration. I think, everybody would sort of go back to the thing that's saying basically it's hope. Hope keeps you going. But it certainly was hope in the early days. But I suppose as time goes by, you start to be realistic about things in the desert or things in life, I suppose. And you realize that you can't live on hope alone. Obviously, it's important to manage your attitude and maintain your mind. But I really believe at the end of the day, it's about, being true to yourself and finding value in what's exactly in front of you on a daily basis. Is life more than that, actually? Because life is really just a journey. I mean, we all are born, we're all going to pass away at some stage, and we can trip over a hurdle early days and say, well, this is too much for me, or I give up right here, and then you've basically lost the rest of the run. And actually, at the end of the day, who wins? Is it the person, is the person with the most money, the person with what wins? I honestly believe if you can find value in every single day, if you can find value in what's in front of you, because we're all going to have tough days. I mean, we know that. That's not coming to a close at all. Ever. I mean, if whatever we've had, we can expect another 5 or 10 or 20 before in the next couple of years.
So true.
So really, it's just about creating the story in your life, and actually trying to see the best in every story, because we're all going to have tough stories, but see the best in it and learn from it, and be able to smile when you speak about it, and actually try and be positive in life. I think that's, for me, the essence of it, maintaining your attitude and trying to see the best in every situation. Because no doubt, we all have similar situations.
Yes, one way or another.
I mean, they all have similar stuff. I mean, we're all human. We all have difficult times, but it's about trying to see the best in it. That's what differentiates all of us, really, is how you come away from a tough situation. Do you wallow? Poor me, my life is so horrible. Or do you actually, do I play victim? Is the world against me? Of course, the world's not against you. Life happens. So it's about just picking yourself up and taking control of your life and maintaining your attitude and pushing on, is what I believe.
That was an amazing, amazing response. And I think that really also aligns with, here we talk about how we're the creators of our own reality. So that, I think, will add so much value to our listeners.
Creators of your own reality.
Yes.
I mean, and that is it. That's the truth. That's it. We choose our paths. Life's a choice at the end of the day.
And in the desert, was there an element of teamwork or necessity for leadership skills to get through the day-to-day sort of happenings?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were only 3 prisoners who were kidnapped at the same time. And it was strange because one of our prisoners just decided that he would be the leader. Just decided, I am going to guide this.
You stepped in.
I have a better idea. I have a better idea than both of you. So rather than me being elected in or chosen in or supported, I'm just deciding that I'm going to be the leader. Anyway, it didn't work. Okay?
I was going to say, it seems like you have a
it didn't,
opinion of this.
It absolutely didn't work. And I was like, well, who elected you to be our leader? We didn't go through an interview process. You didn't come out and say, this is your kidnapping and come and join my team within the kidnapping. No, it was, we all ended up in this. And you just decided that you would be the self-elected leader, like a dictatorship. Yeah, anyway, didn't work at all. So I think regarding leadership, I think what really resonated with me with regards to leadership, what I learned about leadership is so much about self-leadership, guiding yourself and almost leading by example. This is who I am. This is what I believe. And, hopefully people will sign up, be on board for it, and respect you enough to want to follow you, not because they're told that you're You cannot get respect from being told
So
that this
true.
is what I am. Doesn't work. So it was self-leadership and sort of almost picking a higher moral objective. I thought was important. And if you believe in something strong enough, you will want to go and get it. And if you can speak positively about it, people will want to come on board and want to follow you. Common objective. So I also realized the importance of that was when I say higher moral, code, what have you, it's about treating people around you as well with respect. Because no one likes to be bullied or told what to do. And the minute you can win somebody over, the minute somebody actually sort of appreciates you and likes you and wants to be near you, with that's when you create your team, and that's when you can really change the world, I believe. It's important. My desert takeaways: know who you are and be good to people. Because with those two things, like I say, you can change the world. You can lead your army and change the world.
I really didn't expect, I should have known, but I didn't expect that I would already be getting so much from yourself in this podcast. Like, you've already given so much valuable content. Normally I have something to say back, but yeah, I don't think I would be adding anything if I respond, to be honest. So when you were released, because you would have been through a lot, what type of practices did you implement to help you work through your emotions and experiences when you assimilated back into real life, I would say, like back into the world?
It was quite a dance when I came out of the desert, because I'd spent a lot of time in the desert getting to know myself. Obviously, like I say, it was out of necessity because we weren't a team. So I had to get to know myself, to lead myself, that I could actually, try and make relatively educated decisions. The decisions that I could believe in. And if the decisions didn't play out the way I wanted them to play out, then I almost had to take responsibility for the decision and the consequence. So you spend a lot of time sort of getting to know who you are, trusting your decisions and trusting the outcome. And if the outcome didn't work out the way you wanted it to work out, you would have to have the confidence and believe in yourself to know that you could then change the decision halfway down the process and find a new path which would hopefully work out. So you basically, realign yourself during the process. I think when I came out, that was a huge, I say that inverted commas, a huge skill. It's something which I learned. And I say skill, it's not meant to sound arrogant at all. It was something which worked for me in the desert, being able to trust in myself and believe in myself. But the downside from that was that I became an island, if you like. I didn't want to take on other people's opinions because I knew my opinion would work for me. And taking on other people's opinions, like I did in the desert, often resulted in downside for me. And that was a life and death decision. So I sort of got a bit thick-skinned off the back of that. And that then became a huge challenge of mine to soften up from that perspective, and to allow people closer, and to force myself to actually listen to people's opinions, and be they good, be they bad, irrelevant. It's a matter of me connecting with the guys around me and listening to them and letting they trying to help. Listen to them and let them see that they're trying to add value and appreciate from where it's coming. So I had to make a decision to let guys in. But also the things that I did continue when I came out of the desert was I realized, and I suppose in the corporate world, this can almost be controversial, but the world's changed. So actually it's not so controversial. It was about life balance.
Yeah.
Back in the old days.
Life balance. Yeah.
Back in the old days, I think.
Polarizing topic.
Oh, gracious. Back in the old days when I was working in banking, life wasn't about balance. It was literally about achieving your goal for the day, whether you not leave at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because you don't ever leave at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
No.
It's whether it's 6 o'clock or whether it's 9 o'clock at night that you leave, and there was no balance in that, and you end up compromising yourself in every shape and form. So when I came out of the desert, it really was about time management and being strict with myself, and trying to keep the balance and making sure that I had time for my family, time for myself, time for my exercise. So exercise is so important to keep you happy. And then, of course, time for work, because, it's so important that we do engage our brain and our mind in things around us. The desert, hanging out in the desert where there was early days close to zero mental stimulation, to the point.
That's crazy.
One day I started counting sand. I literally started counting sand. I thought, well, I'm here for a while. 1 cubic meter of sand, let's start.
Oh,
it only lasted about a minute, actually. And then I was like, unrealistic.
It seemed like a good idea at the time, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I ended up multiplying it out. I was like, rightio. So, okay, 1 piece of sand is 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter, times that out per square centimeter per cubic meter. And it was a trillion or something.
Wow.
I would have. So, yeah. So I realized, how important it is to actually have mental engagements and stuff. So when I came out of the desert, I threw myself back into the real world. And a lot of people actually asked me, did you actually take time for yourself when you came out of the desert to try and normalize, to try and, figure out who you are, understand what you've been through? And I didn't actually. I came out of the desert, and I think within a week, it took a while for media to settle down, but within a week, within 10 days, I was starting to get into work, and I was joining my father within his company, and I maintained going for a jog every afternoon. My plan was, come 4 p.m., come hell or high water,
you're going to leave, sure.
Off. The computer gets closed and I'm out of here because I'm going to go for a walk or a jog with my wife, and that's my time. So I'm happy to get up early, but the afternoons are my time. But my father, he was in his early 70s at the time. He would wake up a bit late, and he would start his day around 10 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd get a call saying, hey, listen, 4:30, we're going to have a meeting with so-and-so. And I'm like, that's my time. And it lasted probably for about 2-3 months, and my father didn't change. And eventually, I started to soften my staunchness.
Your hard boundary, yep.
And it got soft, and then I started working later, and then I thought, I'm not happy, and I thought I better reinstate that and be, if we're going to have a meeting, it's at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Perfect.
End of story. It must be a morning meeting. The afternoons are my time. I don't want to compromise that. So that was very important, I think, to try and maintain my balance and to try and soften with people around me and let people in, but also to maintain who I was and what was important for me and maintain my mindset. Because if you know who you are and you place yourself around good people, you change the world.
Definitely. And that actually goes into my next question. I'm glad that went so smoothly. Holding things lightly, so not being attached, that's something that we're talking quite a lot about here at Lux's. So is this also something that you've been aligning with? It seems like you are. Why do you think that's important?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gee whiz, that was almost my motto, if you like, prior to the kidnapping. And after the kidnapping, probably something similar. Prior to the kidnapping, when I was living in London, I used to say to my wife, what you can't carry in your rucksack, you probably shouldn't own. That's, and then we bought a flat screen TV. And
that doesn't fit.
And that didn't fit. And then we started collecting rubbish. Sure. But the truth is, if you're going to go and travel the world, travel light, travel light. And I certainly still believe in this. The more you own, the more you have to worry about, the more you have to lose. If you have 10 dogs, you can't go on holiday because you need a dog sitter. If you have 5 cars, it's more insurances. And then everything breaks in this world, and then you got 5 cars with broken windows or flat tires or whatever it is. The more you have, the more stress there is. Travel light, keep it simple. And I find, why do we have to go to a fancy looking house and have a fancy dinner when we can literally throw a blanket under your arm and go and have a picnic in a park and sit down with your friends and have finger food?
Exactly. It's more about the experience, isn't it?
Experience and the conversation. It's about people around you. And the minute we start judging our friends by how much money they earn, or what, it's ridiculous.
And you probably won't have friends if you start judging them, right?
Yeah. And we start, yes, absolutely. Hey? But it's the content. It's the content of the people that you're around, which really matters.
Definitely.
In the desert, I had nothing, absolutely nothing. And Al-Qaeda, some of those guys had absolutely nothing. But yet, when you got involved in the conversation and the different cultures and you started to learn what they knew, the conversation was just so interesting.
That's what, in your book, that's how basically you got through your day-to-day. You were curious about them. You were learning their language. You were learning their faith. And that's how you connected, right?
Fascinating.
Yeah.
It was absolutely fascinating. Certainly in the early days, I was scared I was going to be executed. And when I realized, I couldn't really impact that, and that I had to actually put that worry aside and try and focus on what I could change. That was when I started to actually focus on. I was kidnapped as a tourist. I decided if they're not going to kill me, I'm going to continue to live this as a tourist and try and make the most out of my kidnapping and live it. And that's what I did. And that's why I had conversations with these guys when I could eventually try and understand them. Conversations about the animals in the Sahara, the lifestyles, digging a well, the challenges, the food, the locations in the Sahara is just so huge. No real Westerner ever gets to go and see these places. I'd meet people in the Sahara who literally hadn't seen another person for about 1 year or 2 years. And they had never seen somebody who was of European descent, somebody who was white. Literally, they looked at a white person and they were like, what on earth is this? It's like going to the zoo and some funny exotic animal sitting in a cage, And you could see by the expressions on their faces, they would look at you with absolute sort of not in awe, but in fascination as to what is this? And And it's obvious those guys still run around on camels and they can't travel huge distances. I mean, Al-Qaeda with their vehicles, they can. But the rest of them,
The other people,
they're the poor guys who really are just living from day to day, you know. They never had integration with other people or seen other people because it's just so remote. Sahara is massive. It is just so remote.
Yeah. That sounds amazing to be able to, I guess, what you've spoken about, see so much of that, like try and have an experience out of what you went through and see the beauty in where you were, the animals, the culture, that sort of thing. Like you weren't ignorant to that.
It was part of the stuff that grounded me.
Yeah.
Actually, it was part of the, you know, I found in things I could relate to, I found normality. In things I couldn't relate to, you know, it was slightly beyond my comprehension, like Al-Qaeda with their guns. You know,
that's hard to relate to.
The absolute killing of I mean, and that took me, if not years, before my mind could actually try and actually understand what exactly is going on here. My mind wouldn't want to go there. It kept sort of like hitting up against it, and it would sort of back off and go at a tangent. ADHD kicked in a massive way, and I just couldn't go there. As much as I'd force myself in, I couldn't go there. Yeah.
Wow. And when we talk about roadblocks, I know that we sometimes face them ourselves, but we see them, you know, play out in society. People say they can't do something because they don't have this resource, or they don't have the latest computer, or they don't have whatever it is that they don't have, that they can't achieve their goal. What would you say to those self-imposed roadblocks that people put in for themselves?
Yeah, and they are self-imposed because, I mean, if you take us back to the caveman days and you look at where we are now, there was development. There, you know, things have changed since rolling a rock in front of your cave. I mean, here we are now, and living in the Sahara was almost like going back to caveman days, to guys 2,000 years ago, where where people thought the world was flat and all these kind of things.
Yeah, I heard that they have those beliefs.
No, they do. They think the world's flat. Yeah, they do. I mean, not all of them. Few of them went to school. A lot of them thought the world was flat. And then I come along and say, no, guys, it's round.
You changed their whole world.
Well, I almost changed my own world, because then they would look at me and say, rightio, you're some kind of a witch. We should probably stone you to death. And I was like, whoa, hang on. Maybe I shouldn't speak too quickly, but has anybody here gone to school? Maybe someone can defend me? And then some guy would say, oh, actually, I went to school and the world is round. And I go, shoo.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I've just saved myself from execution. But yeah, like we used to dig around through Al-Qaeda's rubbish. You know, every time we changed camps, Al-Qaeda, it would look like a tip, like a bomb had been off. There was just rubbish everywhere in the Sahara. The Sahara, the world's biggest dustbin, really. Yeah, which I battled with. But every time we changed camps, and we'd pack up a grass hut, and we'd bury all the kitchen stuff. Once the grass hut had been basically moved and dismantled, and the grass thrown around to blow away in the Sahara, we would then walk around picking up their rubbish. I mean, for ourselves. So you'd go there and you'd pick up pieces of paper, and that would become your writing material. You'd pick up pieces of shambar, pieces of inner tube, and you would then cut that into strips, and that became like elastic bands, and that would become stuff that you would use. I tried to create a windmill out of a big pen and a compressor pipe.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean that's ridiculous.
That's creative.
But it was fantastic. Yeah, and the whole idea of creating this windmill was that during Ramadan, when we were fasting, I thought I could put my 5-liter bucket of water next to me.
Yeah.
I could put my windmill, and it would be a dinky windmill. I mean, it would only be the length of a big pen, and then a couple of blades on top, to spin.
Yeah.
I could put that on the roof of my hut, and I would then have this pipe coming down into my 5-liter water bottle, and I could suck it up, and then I would have a shower system above my head.
Oh, wow.
So in the compressor pipe, I would then poke holes. And I thought because when I was in the desert, Ramadan was always during summer, and it was hot. Yeah. So I thought I could create an indoor irrigation system, and I could sit in my hut, and I could have this irrigation system blowing and drizzling water on my head for the next 5 hours just to keep me cool. So yeah, I mean, look, there's a way and a means to absolutely everything. So we are only bound by our own imagination. I wanted to create a kite. I learned how to make rope out of grass, and I thought I could make grass rope, and then create a kite out of a sugar sack. I stopped in the end because I thought Al-Qaeda would be a bit upset if we're all sitting in the middle of nowhere in the desert
making kites,
and next thing is a kite flying 200 meters above the camp.
True. Oh, because would that get people's attention?
Yeah, potentially. If someone comes past, they'll see this this thing floating in the sky, because no one knows what a kite is. They would think there's like ghosts and goblins and demons running around the Sahara, this thing hanging in the air. So I scrapped it, but it was quite a fun project while it lasted. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So basically, as you said, our imagination's the only limit.
Yeah, basically. We can, you need a bit of raw product, but you can even create the raw product sometimes.
And last question. Turning challenges into opportunity for growth. What's your method for making sense of tough times and seeing the good in it?
Turning challenges into good. I would say questioning process is good. Mm-hmm. People always say that this is the way it is done and that's the way to do it. It's not always the best way. It's not always, it was probably thought out at some stage because of a certain set of criteria, but criteria changes and the process doesn't change. Mm. So it's often about actually questioning everything you do and say, well, why on earth do we spend 5 hours doing something when we could spend 30 minutes doing it? What are all these other bits and pieces? Are we wasting our time? Mm. So, and often we'd look at Al-Qaeda's process and you'd look at this and you'd think, wow, you guys, really things can be done very differently. and then we would try something differently, and sometimes they would even look at us and then take on what we were saying.
Would they?
Yeah, sometimes, but also then you also realize you need good management, because sometimes, well, with them, everybody thought they had a better idea and nobody ever everybody took the initiative to try and change something, and then you had 20 different ideas running parallel, and generally it ended up as an absolute mess. And like I say, things were very, very simple there in the Sahara. So we didn't have much. So to give a story off the back of this little situation, what happened was we had the Sahara's hot, car batteries don't survive. Okay, a car battery lasts a year, the heat then destroys a car battery. Wow. So our Land Cruiser utes, we would have these things, and next thing they stop working and you can't start it. So then you got to start pull starting it with the other vehicle. And we had this one particular vehicle, and we were in quite a sand dune area. There was a lot of sand dunes, so there was a lot of ups and downs. And fortunately, we had parked on top of a sand dune. And at the bottom of the sand dune was this big open area, almost like a coliseum, a big flat area.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, amazing. The Sahara's got incredible vistas. And we were parked on top of this thing, and Al-Qaeda then decided, look, we've got to get this car to work. But now what we're going to do is we're going to have to first start it, and then we must go buy a battery, what have you. So now, because it's so up and down hilly, we can't pull start the vehicle from up here. We're going to just run it down the hill and drop it into gear, and off we're going to go. And we're going to just drop the clutch, and we're going to get this thing going. Mm-hmm. Fine, on paper it sounds great. Parked on top of the hill, so we've got to push it off the edge of the hill. So we've got like 6 or 7 guys behind the vehicle, including me, pushing this vehicle. Big debate from Al-Qaeda, who's going to be the driver. Eventually, this one guy decides he is the driver, so he's going to drive this vehicle. He knows how to drive. He hops inside, and we start pushing, and it's thick sand, and we're pushing, and the vehicle's edging forward. And eventually, the vehicle gets to the edge of the sand dune, and we push him off the edge. And then nothing happens, and the car just goes and goes and goes and goes. And eventually he stops, and we're like, what the hell's going on here? He said, no, I didn't turn on the ignition. So I was like, all right, well, that's the first problem. And the second problem was, because the car was moving, I couldn't get it into second gear because now the gearbox is moving. So you then say, well, look, somebody here needs to manage the situation. For starters, turn the ignition on, put the car in gear and put the clutch in. And then once you're moving, drop the clutch. And it ended up being such a disaster because he ended up getting to the bottom of the hill and the car hadn't started. And now what happened was we had this big coliseum open area, and they then went and got 3 camels, and they tied these camels to the front of the car to use it like donkeys or cattle to really pull start the car now. And then what happened was, and I sat there just laughing on top of the hill.
I'd be laughing.
I mean, I tell you, I sat on top of the sand dune, thinking, what a bunch of idiots. They spent the next 2 hours hitting these 2 camels, making the camels gallop while they were pulling the car around this coliseum, and they spent 2 hours dragging the car in a circle around the coliseum.
So they got nowhere.
After 2 hours, they got the car to start. I don't know how they got it to start, but I then went off and I said, you guys are a bunch of twits. Went back to my hut and sat there and thought, you guys need solid leadership.
Yes,
Someone needs to take initiative here.
Yeah. Having a good leader is important, is what I get from this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gee whiz.
Oh my goodness.
They all thought they were good leaders. But actually all of them were ignorant to what was actually required.
Yes. So being present to what's in front of you. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate such a good chat on such short notice, and I know that our listeners will get so much from it.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for getting me in. Lovely to meet you.
No worries. Yeah, you too. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this episode of One Grate Conversation, brought to you by Lux's Grates. We hope you gained some valuable insights that you can implement into your personal and professional life. Please share this episode with others who you think may be interested in this topic. If there's something you'd like covered in future episodes, drop us a line in the comment section or send us a message on social media. To stay up to date with new episodes and to help support One Grate Conversation, please subscribe or follow us on your favourite streaming platform.